Now, after extensive interventions, the Department of Social Development has repatriated a 2-year-old toddler from a Senegalese prison. And this after the child was born in the prison and has been in the care of her mother, who is currently incarcerated since last February for drug trafficking. And this is yet again brought to light the dire circumstances facing children born in foreign jails and the support given to these families by the government. For more on this, we're joined by Lumka Oliphant, who is spokesperson of the Department of Social Development. Lumka, good to have you with us. Morning and welcome to Morning Live.
Morning to you, Sakina, and thank you for inviting us.
Perhaps we could just start with a broader overview by looking at just how dire the situation is of children born to South Africans, especially in foreign prisons, Lumka.
Most cases that we have had is always the women who are used as decoys to traffic drugs around the world. As you would know, that South Africa is a transit for drugs in the world. So most of these cases would come from that perspective. And I think what we need then to be talking about mostly is that South Africans need to understand what drug trafficking can do, and now an unborn and innocent child can just be affected.
And I so vividly remember when the Department of Social Development took the media when you went to Sao Paulo at some point in Brazil, looking at that situation and bringing children back. But when exactly is a child considered to be in distress in a foreign prison, Lumka?
Not just a foreign prison, but in another country. When a child is in need of care and protection, when a child is in a prison, I think the last case that we did was in December, where we repatriated a child who was in the UK. The mother left here with the child to join the grandmother. When they got to the UK, the child was mistreated, and we had to then bring the child back. The two governments somehow then found out about the situation of this child, and the child was just in December repatriated from the UK. But a child who is in need of care and protection, a child who's abandoned, a child whose circumstances are not conducive to the growth and love and care and protection of child, is a child in distress.
So just to this specific case where this 2-year-old toddler was repatriated from a Senegalese jail and arrived in the country yesterday, what were the exact circumstances that led to that child being separated from its mother? And also, where is the child now, and who will be taking care of the child?
The child now, if you looked at the visuals, there were two social workers, one from the Eastern Cape and one from the National Department of Social Development. Both they had traveled to Dakar, and before they went to Dakar, we as National Department got in touch with the Department of Social Development in the Eastern Cape, because the mother comes from the Eastern Cape. Then the social workers of the Eastern Cape then had to go and check where the mother had nominated a family member to look after the child once the child is in the country. We had to go and investigate the circumstances of the would-be foster parent, and after that, then they went to Senegal. Also our embassy plays a very important role in trying to make sure that they institute the first process to repatriation. In the department, we have a directorate called the International Social Services that deals with cases that have to do with children, or welfare services that have to be rendered outside the country. It was then after we have done everything that we were satisfied that the child was going to be in a safe place and in a loving home, and where they can be with a family unit, and that when the mother comes back, she will be able to find her child in an environment that is a home, and actually where she had nominated the child to go to. So now we are in the process of taking the child to the Eastern Cape, and the child will be integrated. The Department of Social Development in the Eastern Cape will then continue with child protection services and make sure that the foster parent also is given the necessary support.
Lumka, is the same process followed for children in South African jails?
Yes, our South African children in jails is that, remember, ours, you have to, we allow them to stay with their mothers for 2 years, whereby they can bond. As a country, we say that the first 1,000 days of a child are important. Then correctional services has got a baby and child section where they make sure that the mother and the child get the necessary things. They are also, stimulated. After that, then it's the same process whereby we will find a nominated foster parent, and that child then is integrated with the family. Same applies with women whose children who have given birth in the country. We do the same thing whereby we make sure that a child is in a home that can be conducive for the growth and the well-being of a child. There we work with the Department of Correctional Services.
So at the moment, as things stand, Lumka, how many children are you aware of who are still in foreign prisons, South African children?
We won't have that unless we are told that there is a child, because it becomes a country-to-country thing where DERCO is informed of a child who would be in a prison. At the moment, we don't know any number as yet. We can't even say that there are any other unless that country notifies us through DERCO and then to our ISS services.
And just again, I know you touched on, women being used as drug mules or decoys. Are these the most common crimes that the mothers are incarcerated for, or are there any others?
When we went to Brazil, in the case that you remember, there were a lot of women that were in Sao Paulo that were taken from rural areas, Sakina. I remember when we went there, because I was part of the delegation that went to Brazil, there were young people who were in tertiary institutions. Somebody comes in and they say to them, you're going to go to Brazil and come back, not knowing that they are going to be taking drugs. And we also heard that others of these people would be in a relationship with the woman and go to the extent of impregnating them, knowing that they want to do this, So there were quite a number of different cases, but there were a lot of women that I met at the time in Sao Paulo.
Well, Lumka Oliphant, that's all we have time for this morning. But thanks so much for once again raising this particular issue for us in the public domain. Lumka Oliphant is the spokesperson at the Department of Social Development, talking to us about the state of South African children born in foreign prisons whilst their mothers are incarcerated for various crimes. And of course, the work that the government is doing in bringing those children and reuniting them with family members back home while the mothers serve out those sentences.